Brief introduction for Kalliopi. She's a senior product leader and strategist with over 10 years of experience in launching and growing B2B and B2C SaaS products. Her products have delighted customers and generated millions in annual recurring revenue. She's a passionate person about the infinite possibilities of technology and the benefits that business and people can derive from including and democratizing access to products and services. At the heart of everything she does is the person, whether that's the customer, the team that we're tirelessly working to build the product for, and really excited to have you sharing some of your insights today on these fantastic topics about how to make your team feel seen.
Thank you, Scott, for the introduction.
No problem.
Take a moment to share my screen, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for joining the conference. I'm also excited to join as a speaker. With my presentation today, I wanted to take a moment to step away from talking about process and administration of teams, people. We often spend a lot of time in business talking about how to operationally be more effective, create more value, be more structured and organized. Of course, working in large teams and in large organizations, that goes without saying that it's a very necessary aspect of what we do. But I wanted to kind of step away from that for a moment and talk about the less obvious but equally important layer, that of human interaction, which happens as we speak, and it happens without us necessarily noticing and being conscious about it. But I think it is as significant, as important as creating those structures and those teams. And I specifically want to speak about the need to feel seen in that space of human interaction. And the reason why I'd like to speak about that is because, moving on to my next slide, feeling seen, all of us want to experience that, is indeed the glue that can help bring the systems and the structure that we create together. And it is so powerful that without it, without that glue, everything can become undone. At the end of the day, what we design and organize and create is very much a structure that we've imagined. But the people that make the structure happen, the very heart of the structure are the people. And without them feeling positive about the structure, there is no such thing as an organized structure or a team. So during my presentation, I thought to make this a much more relatable, perhaps, narrative, I wanted to tell you the story of Tsianou. And Tsianou is a member of the team. They join a group, a team, an organization. And Tsianou goes through the journey of feeling like a lone stranger to growing into indeed a lifelong ally of the team and their company. And I want to take you through what happens during that journey and why Tsianou reacts like feeling like a stranger at the beginning, and what contributes to the transformation of feeling that way to then becoming indeed a very happy and positive member of their team and a lifelong ally. And I chose to describe them as a lifelong ally because I do believe that when we create experiences of trust and connection, as human beings, we have the potential to commit, to want to invest. And that indeed is, I guess, what we could call a lifelong ally. We have those in our life. We have friends, we have family, and we have those as well in our work environment, our colleagues. So they're more just than a committed and happy employee at the end. They are indeed a lifelong ally because the transformation is significant. So Tsianou joins the team, and what do they need when they first join the team? So they're in search of belonging. We've all been there, the first few days of starting a new job and joining a new team. And like us, Tsianou feels a natural desire and a need to become part of that group of people they have joined. And the desire to feel included is a basic human need that we all have, and actually has an evolutionary connection to survival. That's how we, from the beginning of our life, I guess, on this planet, from the things that we know, that's how we ensure that we increase our likelihood of survival by becoming part of teams or groups And that, of course, increased our ability to defend ourselves, to indeed, conquer the situations that were not necessarily in our favor. So that's why the desire to feel included is a basic human need. It really taps into that survival instinct. And the cues that Xenos is looking to feel that they're starting to belong is in the behavior of others. Of course, we're reading the room, and of course, we're interacting with the room. This is now the layer of interaction that happens as we enter a room. It's not something that we initiate, it happens by the simple fact that we are now present in the room. And so the small acts of acceptance that he's looking for is being treated with respect, and being given space to have conversations, but also feel heard and understood. Just giving space doesn't mean that necessarily someone will feel heard and understood. It's how the group of people around them, as a one-to-one conversation, at least with Xenos, is how we react that really makes a difference. And feeling heard and understood is indeed solidifies the sense of feeling accepted. So it's all in the feedback that Xenos is getting from the new group of people and that they have joined. And interestingly, unmistakably, Xenos will detect negativity very instinctively. They won't really have a list in their mind of, these bullet points that I'm sharing here on the slide. We don't really think of these things actively. We feel them, and they are very much, these words, a translation of the things that we're looking for. And the negative aspects of those are indeed, again, feelings. The moment that we feel those feelings of invisibility, receiving negative feedback, sensing ourselves withdrawing, feeling misunderstood, excluded, which is perhaps the byproduct of everything else that is going on. These are all the cues that Xenos is feeling to assess how much they're starting to feel a sense of belonging in their team. So if Xenos starts feeling and detecting positive feedback, of course, they're going to move into a space of feeling alienated. And what does that mean? Receiving negativity, I think, unfortunately, perhaps we've all felt once or twice like that in our life, will put us in a feedback loop of negative of negativity, of negative behaviors. And that's very much kind of the behaviors that we demonstrate when we feel alienated, when we feel pushed away. And what's really interesting about this feedback loop is that of course, why it's a feedback loop. It feeds on itself, and it's an unbreakable vicious circle. Except, of course, for the things that we can do to break it. But on its own, it can keep circling and going on for eternity. So if Xenos experiences it receives negative feedback and experiences those acts of negativity, they are very likely to go into this feedback loop. And it's interesting how that could work. And this is just an example, not necessarily exact science here. I tried with this circle here to reflect, and make it relatable to all of us. Perhaps a cycle that perhaps once or twice we've all fallen into, unwillingly so. So if we say perhaps start from the negative behaviors that Xenos is experiencing, that can lead to feelings of low self-esteem, which in its turn can lead to withdrawing from the team. We become defensive. Feeling vulnerable makes us even more defensive because we feel very exposed. And that in its turn can cause receiving more negativity. It's interesting because as we have responded to our environment, now we are also reacting to it. And our reaction is giving cues to our environment, and then our environment responds again, and so on and so forth. I think it's kind of straightforward. We've all been there, and we know how this feedback loop perhaps works. So the key, I guess, is how can we make Xenos jump out of this vicious circle of negativity? And the key, I guess, to breaking that cycle of negativity is helping Xenos feel that belonging. They joined the team, and their first instinctive desire was to find belonging. And that is why they have not really responded with positive behaviors, because there was some crack, some hack into that process of human interaction, which they were hoping to receive positive feedback. And so the key to breaking that is small and consistent acts of positivity. We are capable of them, and we do subconsciously deploy them every day. And perhaps sometimes because it comes naturally, we don't really think about them. But I think it is worth noticing them, because the very act of consciously adopting them and enacting them really makes a difference. And sometimes we take things for granted, or we consider some things implied. And while our intention is very benevolent indeed, that doesn't mean that the effect that those assumptions have is necessarily a positive one. So it is very important to stop and actively think in the moment and act with intention, and really respond to Tsianou. Tsianou's been any member of the team. I guess you've gathered that by now. Any member of a group that we belong to, whether we are managers, whether we are members of a team, whatever our role is in our organization, the human interaction is always there. So these small acts of positivity are the tools that anyone can adapt, whatever their involvement in a group of people. So I've listed a few here, and this is not by any means an exhaustive list, is a few things that from experience I've gathered and I have tried to consistently and consciously act on to help bring people on board and help them feel comfortable. Active listening, we've heard about that many times. What does it really mean? I think the most important part of active listening isn't just listening. Of course, we can all sit in front of someone and listen, or I guess it could equal not talking. Active listening, however, involves a little bit more than that. We can show understanding, and by that, we can indeed do small things around not immediately responding with our opinion. It's not necessarily always relevant to share our opinion. And maybe Tsianou, when they are giving us feedback or they're sharing something with us, they're not looking for our opinion. They're looking to be heard. And that is more important to them than anything that we have to say. So listening, and without sharing our opinion or advice, giving unsolicited advice can be equally harmful, because it won't make the Tsianou feel understood and heard. It will make them feel invalidated. So active listening is, much more on jumping on a Zoom call and spending 10 minutes where we listen for 2 and maybe we speak for the other 8. That will probably have the opposite effect of what we desire to do. Other things that we can do is, of course, we all work remotely nowadays, but on video, we still have the opportunity to use our body language, and it's a very powerful experience, our body language. So facial expressions and body language are very important, and they can resonate what's happening in the room. We all instinctively look for those cues, and it's important that we try and act on our body language and our facial expressions, again, with intention, very meaningfully. Another one that I find really interesting is when people share feedback with us, whatever the feedback is about, or whatever the position is in relation to that feedback, is to act on that feedback. And this goes back to active listening again, because just because someone is saying something to us doesn't mean that they want us to act on it. But if they are looking for an action and you can confirm and validate that with them, then acting on that is an act of validation, is an act of having listened to them, and an act of acting on what they are feeling and what they need. So that's a good one as well to consider whether it's a good candidate, I guess, in the circumstances that you find yourself in. Another one that I think is very powerful, and some organizations spend time allocating days of recognition and sharing our positive thoughts with our colleagues, whether on LinkedIn or other internal platforms. And that is really expressing our recognition of the other person, whether by sharing some thoughts with them or writing something to them. And I think the mistake that we make is that because we are congenial with them and we are positive with them, that they will translate that in some sort of implied recognition. It's not necessarily the case. We all suffer from, doubts of low self-esteem, self-doubt. It happens. And so hearing someone say what is perhaps a no-brainer, it is indeed very powerful. And I think we need to take time to do that with each other and to do this in teams so that we indeed, receive that positivity when we need it. Showing interest, I think I kind of spoke about that, but I wanted to highlight it because perhaps now in the post-COVID days, we spend less time chit-chatting perhaps as we would have done in the office. And I think we start our calls sometimes with going straight into business. I think it's important to take a moment to go around and ask each other how we are, whether it's a one-to-one with a manager or with the employee that's reporting to us, or just with a group of people that we are on a call with. And that means asking them about the person rather than how's your day going, or perhaps reducing the conversation to talking about work. That is important too. If not, of course, that's on their mind when you ask them how they are. But I think showing an interest in the person that is behind the screen and the things that they want to share with us doesn't necessarily mean that they need to share something specific, but giving them space to share with us how they are, how they feel. We all come to work with the person that we are. It's very important that it is present in the room, and that we give space for that person to be present in the room, and that gives them also an opportunity to share their needs. We often perhaps go into a mode of kind of autopilot where either we're trying to dismiss our needs, or we even assume that other people understand our needs. That's not really necessarily always the case. We are very capable of ignoring each other in that sense, even ignoring ourselves. So I think it's important that we make a point there. We stop and we really take a moment to let other people share their experience with us. Offering help and advice, I guess, goes back to active listening. It's only something that could be positive if the person is looking for that. If Zenos is looking for help and advice, then that is a very positive thing to do. If they're not, and they just want to perhaps offload, tell you how they feel, that's equally good as well. It's equally valid, equally rewarding for Zenos. But if they do need help and advice, and we are, of course, in a position where we can offer that, that is also something that is worth considering. Empathy is a powerful word. We use it and we hear it a lot around us. What I wanted to say about empathy, I was looking around as an opportunity to kind of summarize or define it in a succinct way. I think what is important about empathy is, again, acknowledgement. Again, we can use facial expressions and body language to show empathy. But empathy really, I guess, in how I'm understanding and I try to practice it, is to acknowledge people's feelings and let them share with us their feelings, and not trying to fix them or dismiss them or tell them that everything is going to be okay. That kind of verges on to what perhaps we often discuss as toxic positivity. People do not find empathy in us trying to coat the world in sugarcoat the world, make it as easy as a candy. That is not what they're looking for. And finally, other tools that we can use is positive language. Now, positive language can take the form of many things. It doesn't need to be 3 or 4 expressions that we jotted down and we bring them up and they're generic enough to fit any situation. I think positive language really revolves around this idea that we are, again, listening actively. We're taking the time to understand what the person is saying and needing, and letting them know that you have time and space for them. And an example here that I've used is to say, I hear what you're saying, it makes sense. That is very validating. Even if that in that moment there is nothing that we can do or say, or perhaps we shouldn't do or say, that is enough, and it's very validating. perhaps often we use words like but, or we speak in negative sentences, and just spinning that around to just saying and. I want to do this, and also I heard. These are important things that really do change the atmosphere, and people feel that they're not confronted, or that there is an objection, or that there is indeed negativity. So just a few thoughts on, I guess, these smaller acts of positivity that we can adapt and use on a daily basis with each other. So what happens really when we do adapt those small acts of positivity? They do have the power to transform Xanos from feeling like a stranger to becoming a lifelong ally. So I guess what we could call the reparative benefits of feeling seen. And so it is interesting because when I was putting together these bullet points, I couldn't help but thinking how often we speak about happy employees with these words. You know, how we define positive employee productivity, productive employee behavior with these words. But I think they go beyond that. I don't want to reduce them to being a happy employee, because Xanos is much more than being an employee. They are a person, they belong to a team, they belong to a group, and they have a lot to contribute in terms of what they bring to the table. And of course, they are going to contribute their skill set. They are going to be all of these good things eventually and unavoidably for the company and the organization they belong to. So these words that I've used here to kind of summarize it, and again, they're not an exhaustive list. They are for me the definition really of feeling connected and feeling seen. And that in its turn, of course, brings around the qualities of a happy employee. And better, as I started the presentation with saying, Xanos transforms into a lifelong ally. That is much more powerful than just a happy person or a productive employee. They are someone who's really committed, invested, they're present, they're here, and they are willing to give their whole energy, not just to create value, but just to be there for the team as well, to be resilient, supportive, accepting. And then the feedback loop of negativity that we saw in the earlier slides can easily transform into a feedback loop of positivity, where the more that we feel connected, the more accepting we become. The more accepting that we are, the more supportive we look, and so we make other people around us feel motivated, engaged, and so on and so forth. So just to kind of recap, I guess I'm hoping that with the story of Xanos, I've left you feeling enabled and positive, that if we do indeed adapt these small acts of positivity in our everyday interactions with the people that we work, in our team, in our organization, that we can hope to create an environment of true appreciation and connection in which all of us, including our teams and business, can thrive and help each other thrive. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Kalliopi. I really, really appreciate it. Lots of good content to share there and get some good takeaways. I'm going to surface actually a question from somebody that was actually in attendance here, popped it in the chat, but lots of great tips here for the PM, the individual contributor to incorporate. But any thoughts about how we might get the next level or the organization to make the team feel kind of seen, valued, and connected?
Yeah, except for adapting obviously the small acts of positivity and deploying them in the day-to-day, I think another aspect of really helping with adaptation and helping with acting on them is to make the team aware of those acts of positivity. Again, to not feel rather that it's implied that, of course, we're all about we go around feeling, good and positive, or we have good intentions. Yes, we do. But it is also very important that we're very mindful and conscious of the things that we do, we say, and I would say even of the things that we don't do and we don't say. And that is really building awareness in the team of what tools can they use to do the right things and to avoid doing the wrong things. And perhaps, that's about training, helping the teams come together, doing, team days and bonding. And during that bonding, try to practice more of those, acts of positivity.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously from the sounds of it, a big part of it is, one part we have to make an effort to bring ourselves closer to other parts of the organization, but also the other organization needs to make efforts to do that as well. And that sometimes takes time. We have to create that psychological safety, like you talked about. We have to create the room in the space. We have to make people feel heard. And if we're not doing those things, that's probably going to push them away and make them not want to embrace us as a team or as a group, I assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I think we're going to just shift off and wrap things up for the day.